It's Monday, and that means mock draft. It's my turn. This is my first full 32 pick mock draft, and Croc gets to rip me apart, and you guys get to be here for it. Welcome to Locked On NFL Draft.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of the Locked On NFL Draft Show. I'm your host, former NFL and NFL defensive back Eric Crocker, and of course, as always, joined by my co-host Ryan Tracy. And we want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Also, today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the games start. And man, it's Mock Draft Monday. We just kind of got a bombshell dropped on us right before recording this episode. It's Sunday evening right now, and Tom Brady, he is back in the NFL, announcing he could not stay away. And he decided, you know what? I belong on the field right now more so than being in the bleachers. So we'll kind of see how this mock draft reflects that. All right. Before we really get into, each individual pick, what were kind of like, were there any surprises, when you look at your mock and kind of, think back on it? Anything here stand out to you that maybe you weren't anticipating before going into this mock?
I was of the feeling that this whole Brady thing was going to go down this way. I got a heads up from somebody I trust that this was likely. So you guys will see, you Bucs fans, you'll see this reflected in this mock. But my big goal for this, when I set out for it, was to not overreact. Like, there was very few things that I thought deserved an overreaction in terms of what happened at the combine. A lot of boxes were checked off. There are obviously guys that were surprises, but I tried not to overreact to that because it doesn't change their film enough. So I really was concentrated on that. I tried to take the conservative approach, which I think because of the surface in Indy, I think a lot of the execs are going to take a cautious approach because that field was fast and they're saying it all over the board. So I kind of stuck with that as let's take what helps the franchise without much risk. And that's the way I approached it.
And you definitely went with that approach when you look at really not just your top 5, but your top 10 as a whole. I see a lot of offensive linemen and defensive linemen flying off the board, starting with the Jacksonville Jaguars at number 1 overall. I think this is the first surprise of the draft. Of the mock. Obviously, we're just getting into it, but Ekwonu out of North Carolina State, offensive tackle, you have him going to Jacksonville Jaguars, first pick. Number 2 overall, you have the Detroit Lions taking Aiden Hutchinson out of Michigan. Number 3 overall, Houston Texans. They go with the offensive tackle out of Alabama, Evan Neal. The New York Jets at pick 4 take Kayvon Thibodeau. And at pick 5, the New York Giants, they take Trayvon Walker, edge rusher out of Georgia. And right away, we see that the trenches dominate the top 5, whether it's the tackle position or these guys rushing off of the edge. But I do think that Trayvon Walker, that's a guy, he's kind of starting to climb up boards, especially after that tremendous combine that he put up. But there are some people that say, well, maybe the combine numbers don't match what's being seen on tape. What are some of your thoughts with the guy at number 5, Trayvon Walker out of Georgia, going to the Giants?
This is one of the few combine results that actually made me feel better about what I saw on film, because you see spurts. You saw him drop in a coverage at time from what was either a tight aligned head up on the tackle 5 tech, sometimes shaded inside as well. But you saw like just little pieces of it. But this confirmed he's got that athleticism. And it's funny because I ended up putting these guys here because I tried not to overreact to Hutch's short arms. I try not to react to Kayvon deciding to bow out of the combine, which, as I understand it, a lot of execs are sensitive to. I certainly was. So there's a way for this to roll out in the coming weeks if it continues down this path, that if Hutchinson's arm concern and Thibodeau's actual dedication concern, could flip all the way where Walker's on the rise and they're both on the fall. You could see Walker be the first edge off the board in some scenarios if this continues through the pro days concept. And I wanted to kind of like set that as a possibility, and that's why I went here.
I like it. And also, you have Evan Neal not going number 1 overall to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who need offensive tackle. But instead of Evan Neal, they actually take Ekwonu out of North Carolina State offensive tackle as well. So kind of what went into you kind of flipping those roles, especially with some people thinking that Ekwonu might be more of a guard, but you're like, no, not only is he the best tackle in his class, he's good enough to be the number 1 overall pick to Jacksonville, who definitely potentially needs to protect their young stud quarterback, Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, it is partially about the guard aspect of it, but it's also about the fact that I see them as very equal on tape, just within a hair of each other. But I do see that Ekwonu is a guy with more explosion. He's got more of that burst right off the ball, in my opinion. Whereas I think Neal is a more steadier, like conceptually steady player, right? They already have decent protection in Jacksonville. So I wanted to get the upside of a guy, whether he's at guard or at tackle. And if they end up re-signing everybody but they have both their bookend tackles, if he does go into guard, you get him out in space. I think he's got the advantage there over Neal. So in terms of specific fit for Jacksonville, I think Doug Peterson's going to like him higher, and I think that's going to influence the pick.
And we talked about, that top 5 being dominated by the trenches. The next 2 picks, pick 6 by Carolina Panthers, who take Charles Cross out of Mississippi State, and pick 7, the New York Giants. They take Trevor Penning out of Northern Iowa. Some more trenches there. But then after that, pick 8, Atlanta Falcons. They take wide receiver out of Ohio State, Garrett Wilson. Seattle Seahawks at pick 9, who just got there with a trade up with the Denver Broncos, take Jermaine Johnson, the edge rusher out of Florida State. And then at pick 10, the New York Jets, back on the clock, they take Kyle Hamilton, safety out of Notre Dame. I think the one here that people are going to be intrigued by for sure is Atlanta taking a receiver. And is this any type of reaction to what's going on in Atlanta? They just had Ridley, who has now been suspended for the 2022 season, and they already were very slim at the receiver position. Now, extremely slim when you don't have a Ridley on the field. Maybe they address some of it throughout free agency, but I do think potentially Atlanta having to spend a top 10 pick on that as well. Is that one of your thoughts going into having Atlanta take Garrett Wilson at pick 8? And why Garrett Wilson?
Garrett Wilson's my number 1 because he can do a little bit of everything. I don't think he's a one-trick pony. I think you can put him in a situation and he can fulfill multiple desires. He doesn't have to be an X. He can run the drags. He can run the overs. He showed off his speed, and that kind of confirmed that he can be your deep threat if you need it. I think pairing him with Pitts in particular is a tandem that you can see attacking one half of the field and really putting some work on him. They're not going to move away from Ryan. That's just the feeling that I get. And that's the thing. The quarterback was here a couple weeks ago. I mocked them a quarterback. I just don't think they're ready to pull the trigger on this quarterback class. So that brought me back down to how can you maximize what you have in Matt Ryan? And that's giving him a weapon that can do a little bit of everything.
All right. You have 2 teams here, Carolina Panthers and Seattle Seahawks. A lot of people think that these are 2 teams that are going to be very aggressive in the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes if everything kind of continues as it's going right now, looking more positive for him and the way things are playing out. But if you had to choose between the Panthers and the Seahawks, which one of those teams, who both are linked to him, which one lands Deshaun Watson and ends up putting the Houston Texans picking in the top 10?
I got to tell you, that's why I did this, because I couldn't pick one. It literally is a coin toss. I could see Deshaun being more comfortable on the East Coast in Carolina, like in terms of environment and what he's used to. Seattle's a very long way away, and you're playing in the shadow of Russ Wilson. It doesn't matter that they chose to trade him. You're playing in Russ's shadow. And I think that it might be just a slight bit more attractive to play in Carolina, where you don't really have that. I think he's got his choice, but I was hedging my bets here because I don't know where he's going to land.
Yeah. And I think that, we might find out soon. By the time y'all listen to this, there might be some updated news on Deshaun Watson and the future of where he will play. All right. We'll look into that as the week goes on. But first, when we come back, we want to talk a little bit about the Washington Commanders. Who are they going to take at pick 11? They are on the clock. But right now, y'all, Built Bar, I know you guys are trying to stick to your New Year's resolutions, and it gets tough. And I'm telling you, I just came back from New Orleans. It was really hard. I had to get some of that Cajun food there, but you don't have to fall off the way I did this weekend and go off the deep end, because you can stick to your New Year's resolution of changing your eating habits, getting healthier by eating some Built Bars. All right. This time of year, pretty much everybody has given up on their New Year's resolutions. You don't have to, but you know what? Have you tried the puffs? The Built Bar puffs, they are so good, and you are missing out if you haven't tried them yet. It's the first ever protein infused marshmallow. They are fluffy, they are marshmallowy. They are not just a protein bar, they are a treat, and they are covered with 100% real chocolate. All right, puffs are a fan favorite, and they have some incredible flavors. All right, yummy cinnamon churro. You have coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. They're all so good, and I promise you, they'll be your new favorites just like they are mine. All Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, and yes, that includes the Built Bar puffs as well. They are low in calorie, high in protein, and they replace any candy bar that you have because they are better. And a typical candy bar is anywhere to 200 to 300 calories. All right, not good for you at all. Go to built.com and scroll through the macros chart, and you'll be blown away by the high protein, low calorie, and high fiber and low carbs that these bars have. Most of them contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to any candy bar, which usually has around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozen net carbs. It doesn't even match up here. All right, there's no competition. Mint brownie, coconut almond, and the new one this month, white chocolate cookies and cream. They are all delicious, and new flavors come out all the time. I think a flavor that you might like, and if you can think of it, they'll make it. And if they do, it'll be delicious. All right, at Built Bar, they are worried about the taste. They want everything to taste really good first, and then they'll figure out how to make it healthy. I don't know how they do it, but they don't miss, man. They do it every single time they get it right. Go to built.com and use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off of your order. Again, use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com.
I need
All right, Ryan.
a mocha jalapeno Built Bar. That's what I need.
Mocha jalapeno.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Uh,
Chocolate and hot, can't go wrong.
I don't know. Yeah, I didn't know that mocha and jalapeno go together. But we'll see who goes together with the Washington Commanders at pick 11. Are they? You have them taking the second receiver off the board now. Jamison Williams out of Alabama. Of course, he's coming off of an ACL. At pick 12, you have the Minnesota Vikings taking Ahmad Sauce Gardner out of Cincinnati, cornerback. At pick 13, Cleveland Browns, who also just traded for Amari Cooper. They are now taking edge rusher out of Michigan, David Ajabo. At pick 14, Baltimore Ravens take Jordan Davis, interior defensive lineman out of Georgia. And at pick 15, you have the Philadelphia Eagles taking cornerback out of LSU, Derek Stingley Jr. I think this is maybe like a prime spot. If you look at the guys that are flying off the board here, pick 11 through 15, I mean, you'd be really good with taking any of these guys in the top 10. So the fact that you're able to get them in this range, I wonder if maybe some of these teams in the top 10 elect to kind of trade down into this range and still get a tremendous football player. But I want to start with you taking Jamison Williams out of Alabama to the Washington Commanders. You know, are you just really confident that, hey, he's going to recover from this ACL injury and be just fine? Or you just think he's that much better than anyone else to where it's like you got to force him into this spot because he's so much better than a Chris Olave, Treylon Burks, a Drake London, or anyone else that people might like as the wide receiver 2 in this class?
From what I'm hearing in the wake of the combine, the NFL feels that he is good to go. I will put it this way. If he didn't have that injury, he'd be the number 1 pick. I'm convinced of that after watching the rest of the prospects go through it. So you're right. This is where I think like the meat, this is where the most value meat comes in this draft, is starting right here in this group. So I think we will see some trades out. That makes sense. And I think this will help Carson Wentz to have not only Terry McLaurin, but another big weapon that he can go to that might take a little time to get used to it, but then he'll have somewhere to go with the ball deep down the field.
Also, you got the Minnesota Vikings taking Ahmad Sauce Gardner. So I think, they've been having some bad luck with drafting corners, especially high. I think, you look at Gladney a couple years ago. You look at the corner out of Mississippi State. why am I blanking on his name? Oh, Cam Dantzler. All right. So now it's like, no, we're going to get you Sauce Gardner, a long athletic guy at pick 12. I really like that. And Baltimore doing what Baltimore does, being big in the middle, down there on the interior offensive line and defensive line. They go with Jordan Davis. I like that one. At pick 16, you have Philadelphia Eagles taking wide receiver out of Ohio State, Chris Olave. The Chargers, they've been in the market for a receiver, but they brought back Williams. So in this mock, they go with interior defensive lineman Devontae Wyatt out of Georgia. Pick 18, the New Orleans Saints go with Kenny Pickett, quarterback out of Pittsburgh. All right. Philadelphia Eagles at pick 19 take George Karlaftis out of Purdue, edge rusher. And at pick 20, the Pittsburgh Steelers take Malik Willis out of Liberty. And was there anything that really went into taking the, Kenny Pickett to New Orleans over Malik Willis? Do you have one of these guys higher, or do you think these are just better fits for these guys where they landed? Because I know a lot of people are kind of talking about Malik Willis potentially being QB1 in this class.
Yeah, I have them neck and neck. I'm waiting for a differentiation. And for me, it is about fit. And I think playing inside a dome in the South, snow's not going to be an issue. Your division's not going to be bad weather. I think that's a good fit for the guy with the smallest hands to come out since Mike Vick. I think that's like a safety net. I think if there's a team that is going to take a chance on him over Willis, I think that's probably it. I think Willis and his complete 180-degree game from Ben Roethlisberger, being able to break the pocket, being able to exploit with his legs, being able to deliver that ball through the wind and the ice and the rain. I think that's a near perfect fit. We hear that there's a lot of traction there. So I kind of rolled with that, but it makes sense.
Yeah, as long as Ben Roethlisberger doesn't pull a Tom Brady and come out of retirement before he's officially retired, I think Malik Willis to Pittsburgh at 20 will be probably a popular pick, getting them a guy potentially for the future. I really like it. And Chris Olave to the Philadelphia Eagles. That was a team who I didn't really think that the Eagles were in the market for a receiver, but I just heard them sniffing around a potential free agent receiver or trade for a receiver. So now them getting Chris Olave, it makes a lot of sense, in giving Jalen Hurts another target after drafting Devonta Smith top 10 last year. Devonta Smith quietly had a really good season as a rookie, but it's kind of overshadowed by everything else going on there with Philadelphia.
Well, I'll tell you too, the fact that he was able to walk into that offense and hit off the ground, that does play into, hey, a wide receiver can work in this offense. We need to emphasize scoring points. That's kind of what drove that decision.
Score points, be more explosive. I think that's the same thing that the team that's on the board at pick 21 is going to take. You got the New England Patriots. They are on the clock when we get back. But first, it's that time again for college basketball. The tourney is finally upon us. March Madness. And there's been some big-time March Madness moments going on just this past weekend with the conference championships. I saw my UCLA team. They failed at Arizona. Wasn't something I liked. But if you're going to bet on any of these, bet online. That's the place for you to do it. From all the latest odds, contests, and player props, BetOnline.net is the #1 source for all of your sports betting needs and information. Our BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just about March Madness, people. All right. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games, whatever game that is. For me, I really like Blackjack 21. That's my go-to one. Well, BetOnline.net, that's the place for you. Head over right now to the website and use the mobile device to learn more about the trends and action going on right now at BetOnline, where the games start. All right, we got the New England Patriots on the clock, and I was curious to see, do they try to be more explosive and help their quarterback out? Do they go with that in the first round, which I think a lot of people think, hey, receiver for the New England Patriots, that's a need. They got to get more explosive there. All they had was Kendrick Bourne and the rest of everyone else. And I think most people tell you not ideal for Kendrick Bourne to have to lead you in receiving, but he did. But you still went in a different direction, knowing, you know what, man, you can get production in the second round at the receiver position, but maybe you can't get Devin Lloyd out of Utah. So New England Patriots, they select linebacker Devin Lloyd at pick 22. You have the Las Vegas Raiders, who just a couple of years ago, they selected Henry Ruggs at pick 12. Now they go with Treylon Burks out of Arkansas at pick 22, and they helped Derek Carr get another weapon. At pick 23, Arizona Cardinals take cornerback out of Washington, Trent McDuffie. At pick 24, the Dallas Cowboys, they take Drake London, receiver out of USC. And at pick 25, you have the Buffalo Bills taking cornerback and Andrew Booth. And I really like Andrew Booth out of Clemson. But pick 24, you talked about kind of reacting to some of the things that went to the combine. Dallas Cowboys, they just traded away Amari Cooper. Was Drake London to the Dallas Cowboys in reaction to some of the things that happened over the weekend with the trade?
It wasn't actually, because I actually worked this up before that trade occurred, but it was a way to hedge the bets about a potential that you see with Amari Cooper. He's generally injured. It's something you're going to deal with every season. The question is just how many games will he miss? So I thought it was a way for them to give Dak another weapon. They're going to have some issues in the coming years with paying these guys. They have weapons at the receiver spot they're going to have to pay. There's the Zeke contract. There's a lot coming up there. So let's get younger at the position, give him somebody that can play in tight, that can play out on the edge, that can go up and get the ball, that can be helpful to your quarterback. And it just made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, in that pick 25, you had the Buffalo Bills taking cornerback Andrew Booth out of Clemson. And I like that one. You got Tre'Davious White's coming off of an injury. They played with Wallace there. And I think you would like to improve. I don't know if he was a stopgap. They brought him back for a year. And it's like, you know what? We really want to improve at that position. I believe Wallace is going to be a free agent again. But you're going to look to try to improve on what he's giving you. Although, regardless of Wallace being out there or not, Buffalo Bills, if I'm not mistaken, had the number one defense in the NFL last year. So they were able to hold it down tremendously until they had to go up against Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs. Is Andrew Booth, is that a pick that's kind of, in reaction to some of the things that happened late in the season, in the postseason, that sent them home, not being able to get Kansas City off the field, 13 seconds left in the game. All right, at pick 26, you have the Tennessee Titans taking linebacker out of Georgia, Nakobe Dean. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they helped Tom Brady, who just came out of retirement, but wasn't really retired, but stopped wanting to be around his family, said, you know what, I've had enough of this. I'm back to lead. Kenyon Green, the offensive lineman at Texas A&M, he's going to help protect his quarterback, who they had a little bit of trouble doing that in the Rams game in the playoffs. You got the Green Bay Packers taking Jahan Dotson out of Penn State, Miami Dolphins taking Zion Johnson out of Boston College, and Kansas City Chiefs taking Dax Hill out of Michigan. I definitely want to start with Kansas City Chiefs taking Dax Hill, because this is a place where, you're losing Tyrann Mathieu. Sounds like you're going to lose him to free agency. Do you want to fill him or replace him with someone who has that similar skill set? Also with Dax Hill, I think people are kind of confused with what he is. He's going to be a outside cornerback because he kind of profiles and has that type of ability in athleticism, but he hasn't played there. But he's listed as a safety, but he played a ton of nickel. So he has a lot of versatility there. With this pick at 30, where the Kansas City Chiefs playing them? And was Tyrann Mathieu the guy in mind when you had this pick?
He actually wasn't, although there is that crossover where he could drop down and play the robber stuff. I like him in that role as well. There's a chance that Tyrann tests the market and doesn't like what he finds. He could be back in Kansas City. I'm not ruling that out. But no, this is about playing the nickel and locking that down. The Chiefs used L'Jarius Sneed, who is an up-and-coming CB around the league, as their nickel last year because he's capable. He's got the speed to burn. He's got good change of direction. He's got real long arms. He can defend. But I think he's better at the outside. So bringing in Dax, putting him at the nickel, allows you to upgrade two positions at once, in my opinion. And then I expect them to either re-sign Charvarius Ward or move Fenton out there, or they could even get a little bit more noisy and do something like a Gilmore or something like that in free agency. They definitely understand that their secondary needs some work, and that's the thought behind it.
It definitely doesn't. I mean, we talked about the Buffalo Bills and, kind of their situation late in that game. But also, I mean, a secondary that got torched as well was the Kansas City Chiefs and kind of their inability to, stop the Bengals offense down the stretch in that game when they needed it most as well. Got to get those stops, and maybe, addressing a safety or a guy who's kind of a Swiss Army knife would definitely help. Green Bay Packers, they go ahead and draft Jahan Dotson out of Penn State. And, I'm pretty sure everyone in Green Bay, Wisconsin, Cheesehead land, they're really liking this pick. Getting, they got their quarterback back, Aaron Rodgers. And again, I mean, all this quarterback news, a guy who what was he going to do? Everybody was waiting on pins and needles, watching the Pat McAfee show, tuned in to see what is Aaron Rodgers going to do. Well, he's back. And Jahan Dotson, he's going to play opposite our guy Devontae Adams, or do you think this is a guy who, hey, you play him outside, you play him inside, you just move him around, and he just works off of Devontae Adams?
I think he's a matchup breaker, is what it is. I think you can put him where you need him. I think he can do everything for you. He's got the best hands in this draft, in my opinion, and I think he can run every route that they need to. And for me, it's clear that the front office in Green Bay, they've done a 180. It's no more arguing with Aaron. It's doing everything you can to support him. That contract says that to me. And I think a pick here, this is a great fit that can do a little bit of what they had hoped Cobb would be able to do a few years ago. This is really, I think, following through on that concept.
Nice. And the last two picks of this draft, first round, you have pick 31, Cincinnati Bengals, taking Tyler Smith, interior offensive lineman out of Tulsa. And at pick 32, Detroit Lions, they take Matt Corral out of Ole Miss. And I definitely went somewhat the same with offensive lineman. I believe I had somebody going different at pick 31, Tyler Linderbaum, I think. But you have, or maybe it was Zion Johnson. I got to look back at my mock. But Cincinnati Bengals taking offensive lineman. We both have the Detroit Lions taking Matt Corral. Let's go this route with Cincinnati. If they don't go offensive line, we just watched them go to the Super Bowl, be explosive, one of the more explosive teams, and obviously the quarterback being under duress had a hand in them maybe not really fully pulling that game off. But if they don't go offensive line, what position or player do you think they potentially can attack this late in the draft at pick 31?
That's the big question, is I think if you don't support Burrow and build up that offensive front, you have to get another weapon. You got three good receivers. You got a great back there, right? You might as well have more. Make a strength stronger, right? That's the only way. But I'm betting that you can't hit lightning in a bottle twice, sustain 50 sacks on a season, 9 in a game or two, and still survive. So I think there is no question. If there's anybody with a first-round grade left at 31 on the offensive line, you take him no matter what. I don't care where he plays. It doesn't matter. You get somebody to protect Joe Burrow.
Right. I like that. And then again, back at pick 32, Detroit Lions, they take Matt Corral, and, it gives them a chance to not have to play right away. And I think that's an ideal situation for a young guy. I think it's Quincy Avery that says it. He thinks all rookies quarterbacks should sit for the first year. And we know that's not the case in today's NFL. People want those guys on the field right away. But, Corral goes to a situation where he doesn't have to be the guy. Not a whole lot of pressure being taken at the end of the first round, but also still gets that fifth-year option for a Detroit Lions team. Again, we want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. After you listen to this, go ahead, tune into Ryan Tracy's podcast with the Locked On Chiefs, so you'll know everything going on with Kansas City Chiefs 5 days a week coming right at you. And also Locked On 49ers with myself and Brian Peacock. But that's going to do it for this episode. We will see y'all tomorrow.